Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. At the end of my Was It Any Good Though series, I came to a conclusion that I suspected would be the case, but wouldn't have truly known until I'd looked at each class in the level of detail that I did. And that is that every class can be considered good, and while some are more favoured, there is really no class that is just straight up bad or useless. Each class has their own unique identity and iconic spells. Not everyone needs to have a CC, not everyone needs to have an interrupt or even a DPS cooldown, and while some classes can do things others cannot, it's often also the case vice versa. So in this new series, I want to look at the ways you can make the most out of your chosen class and find out how to play to your class's strengths. The points I'll be looking at will differ from class to class in relation to their strengths, as they aren't all shared across the board. Today I'll be looking at the rogue, and we'll cover these points: stealth, burst and control, PvE, PvP, and then some macros and add-ons. Getting towards the end, today we're doing the rogue, which means mage last. Not a bad thing since mage is going to be a massive video, I can already tell you that, but today we have the stealthy guy, the one who lurks in the shadows. A class dedicated to burst and control, the rogue. One of the typical characters you'll find in any kind of RPG, you just have to be some kind of mysterious guy who uses daggers and poisons. And Blizzard took that idea and built on it pretty brilliantly, giving us one of the most well-rounded classes in the game. So enough talk, let's cut to the chase and see how rogues settle their vendettas. Stealth. Let's talk stealth. You can't kill what you can't see after all. Stealth has levels, and as you level it up at the trainer, which you should do as soon as you have a new rank available, the speed penalty is reduced and enemies have a harder time detecting you. Some items also increase your stealth level, as well as the talent Master of Deception, which increases your stealth level considerably. Pretty vital for PvP, especially against other rogues. Getting the opener off is a huge deal, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, but your footprints don't actually show up in snow when you enter stealth. How cool is that as a little touch? A number of factors go into stealth detection, and how early you are seen by enemies. Faction-wise, Alliance do have an advantage in the rogue mirror, since Night Elves gain an extra stealth level thanks to the passive on Shadow Meld, and humans get Perception, which boosts stealth detection considerably for a short while. A human rogue will almost always get the opener. On top of this, dwarves have Stone Form to immune bleeds or blinds. However, then again, Alliance have to deal with orc rogues and hardiness, and I can only imagine how tilting this would be to play against sometimes. Stealth detection has a lot of unwritten rules in the game on exactly how it works. What kind of numbers go into the chance that you are detected early? Heightened Senses gives you a small increase to detection, which is another great PvP talent by the way. Cat's Eye Ultra Goggles are a great investment, and you can macro them to be equipped as you enter stealth with the item rack add-on, as well as the lesser used Cat's Eye Elixir and Warlock's Fell Hunter passive Paranoia. If you see a Warlock with some funny looking red goggles and a Fell Hunter out, there's a very high chance that you'll be detected before you can open. And this is why you always hide your head slot, by the way, so people can't make reads on you like this. In some cases, it may be correct to vanish before you open. Vanish just doesn't reset stealth, it raises your stealth level by a huge amount. A human with Cat's Eye Goggles and Perception will not have an advantage against a rogue that has the Vanish buff active. It really makes that much of a difference. Running through large groups of enemies, trying to skip dangerous packs of mobs in PvE, don't underestimate pre-vanishing for the buff to hopefully avoid debuffs rather than risking yourself being noticed. All in all though, stealth is honestly one of the best abilities in the game. For you rogue mains out there, especially on PvP servers, I bet you can't even imagine what the game is like without it. The massive draw of being able to just go completely out of sight whenever you want is definitely one of the biggest draws for the rogue in general, but it's far better though than being more than just a sneaky guy. If I had to describe rogues in 3 words, it would be stealth, burst and control. We've covered stealth, let's talk about the other 2. Rogues have some of the highest burst damage capabilities and the most crowd control in the game, and as such are highly dependent on playing around their cooldowns in order to do their best. You may have often been on the receiving end of a stun lock or a nice 30+ second CC chain from a rogue, and that is really the rogue's win condition. A rogue caught out of stealth or missing their cooldowns is at a severe disadvantage unless you outgear someone heavily. This is one of those things that makes stealth even better, since you can just chill when you're waiting for those cooldowns to come back. So let's talk control first, especially cooldowns. Evasion being a flat plus 50% to dodge for 15 seconds, 5 min CD, can be reduced to 3.5 minutes through talents. The rogues of course scale up with agility to increase their dodge stat,
and they scale with this stat very strongly. 14.5 points in agility equals 1% dodge, so a geared rogue can already have around 30% or so dodge before you even consider taking anything else into account. And note this is at level 60, at level 10 or 19 agility scales even harder to the point where you can get more or less untouchable with evasion up. There are two classes who can punish the use of this ability really, one being arms warriors, especially spec'd into improved overpower, and secondly hunters who have counter attack. Rogues attack fast, they're pretty likely to get parried, and this attack can't be dodged and is a 5-second route. Sprint, 15-second cooldown, 70% movement speed boost, can be used in stealth. 5-min cooldown again can be reduced to 3.5 through talents. There is also an improved sprint talent that removes all routes and slows, kind of a mage dueling tool more than anything else really. The PvP boots add a 3 seconds increase to the duration of sprint 2. Simple ability lets you close gaps or get away in many circumstances. Blind, 5-min CD, 30 energy cost, can be reduced to 3.5 again through the elusiveness talent in the subtlety tree. 10-yard range as well on this. More or less a guaranteed reset in a fight. Keep in mind this can break early, which is just bad luck and will probably mean you're in big trouble. Remember, it is a poison and it's not going to stick if a druid has abolished poison active, a shaman has poison cleanser and totem down, the target is taking any damage over time, or a dwarf with stone form active. It also does require blinding powder, so make sure you stock up. Then they've got Vanish, the same cooldown and reduction as the others. Returns you to stealth and removes all movement impairing effects, as well as increasing your stealth level as mentioned before. This one needs a reagent as well, Flash Powder. Timing this one right can avoid more or less any spell really. Even instant cast ones like cheap shots from other rogues, so always keep that in mind when you've got this active. And finally, deep in the subtlety tree, Preparation, which resets all of these cooldowns instantly. Pretty insane on the power level here, big cooldown itself though. Then of course we've got Sap, that ability that sort of makes you feel like you've lost a fight even before it starts when it goes off. It can last up to 45 seconds in PvE, will usually break around the 20 or so mark in PvP though. This is more useful in PvP for sure, as it really needs to be talented to be effective through the improved Sap talent, giving you a 90% chance to avoid dropping stealth as you sap. Managing these cooldowns for the correct time is key and will make the difference between a good and a great rogue. Cheap Shot being a 4-second stun giving 2 combo points and can be improved significantly through initiative and dirty tricks. Follow it up with a Kidney Shot at 5 combo points, can be another 6-second stun for a total of 10 seconds of not playing the game. And the best thing about this combo is Kidney Shot doesn't share a DR with Cheap Shot, meaning it'll always last the full amount. Finally, a quick mention for Gouge, 4 seconds baseline, improved to 5.5 seconds through talents, and can have a second removed from the cooldown through PvP gear sets. Very strong ability, allows you to reset combos easily just applying this and running away. Since it costs 45 energy, once it's improved through talents, you'll have just about gained 60 energy by the time it runs out. And finally, you can channel a full Gnomish Death Ray whilst this is active if you've got the improved version on, so it's very strong. And now the burst side. This one depends on your specialization a lot more. Talents like Opportunity, Improved Backstab, Lethality, Improved Eviscerate, or Ambush all add a massive amount of damage to your class. There are so many ways a rogue can delete your health bar, it just comes down to what specialization you prefer to do it as really. And finally, just a quick mention on Eviscerate. It used to just have flat damage and absolutely no scaling, so a rogue in full tier 3 decked out in epics would hit the exact same as somebody wearing nothing but a skinning knife, as you may have seen in World of Warcraft. On the version we're playing on, patch 1.12, it does scale with attack power at 0.15%, so it is even stronger than it used to be, so enjoy that, rogues. With all that focus on burst and control, you may think that rogues would potentially sacrifice some of their overall damage in the process. Well, you'd be wrong, as they're also one of the top performers in PvE. Not only this, they have a variety of specializations to choose from. The most important thing for a rogue is their main hand weapon. The majority of your damage is auto attack, Sinister Strike, or Backstab. Ideally, you want as slow as possible weapon in the main hand due to how scaling works with these two main abilities, since slow weapons have higher damage values on them to make up for less overall attacks. Slower weapons are arguably even more important for daggers. Much like warriors, rogues tend to do well because they actually have cooldowns to press during fights. Well, some of their specializations do anyway. Combat gets access to Blade Flurry, giving an additional 20% attack speed, and allowing your attacks to hit another nearby target. Adrenaline Rush, doubling your energy generation from 20 per 2 seconds to 40. Combine these two together, especially where you're on fights with more than one target and you're really going to fly up on the meters, even with moderate gear levels. And despite needing this gear, especially weapons, to put out solid damage, rogues get a lot of stats for free through talents, especially from precision as well as weapon expertise, which can compensate heavily when it comes to gearing up. Your weapon more or less decides what specialization will be best for you in pretty much both PvE and PvP. Not only will auto attacks be a large amount of your damage, your Sinister Strike is weapon damage plus a flat amount, and your backstab is percentage based off your weapon's damage. Builds that involve Sinister Strike are often sword based to take advantage of sword specialization. Something along this line puts out some serious damage, getting all those talents we've just talked about that benefit rogues so hugely. The only potential downside with swords is that your best in slot swaps around with each new content drop. And one of the really great things about daggers is your best in slot main hand Perdition's Blade from Ragnaros will last you all the way through to phase 5. So naturally it's hugely contested. It does so good because it's a slow weapon, and backstab and ambush, as mentioned, scale off a percentage of your weapon's damage. There are good alternatives too. Shadowfoot Stabber can be picked up when starting out as a bind on equip, so no RNG involved in actually getting the drop. Specialization wise, something like this can be good. Keep in mind this is really geared towards PvE though. It will put out a huge amount of damage, but lacks much of the utility that Subtlety Tree gives you. The important things to note here are getting both talents that boost up your critical strike, malice and dagger specialization, as well as lethality to boost those crits, and opportunity to increase your builder damage by a large amount. Aside from PvE, however, rogues are also very competent in PvP, so let's take over a look at that next. As we talked over the cooldowns earlier, I'm not going to go into too much detail about them here again, but suffice to say, rogues will need to play around their cooldowns and stuns pretty heavily. Emo builds are about as strong as they're ever going to be at the moment, with how strong the flat damage on Eviscerate is currently compared to its relatively weak scaling, making cold blood builds particularly nasty at the moment. This specialization also picks up Preparation, which also resets the cooldown of cold blood in addition to everything else you can do. This build is very powerful in any 1v1 scenario. It also gets Master of Deception, Heightened Senses, and Camouflage, making it very good for rogue mirrors as well. On the dagger side for PvP, it can be good too, however it's definitely more RNG reliant. You really need your backstab or ambush to crit to put out good damage. It's also in a rather awkward position where there are so many talents you want to put points into, you have to make some choices in regards to which talents you prefer. Which I suppose you can see as a good thing. Not every class has so many choices to make or to choose what you feel is best. However, a big downside for this specialization is not having Master of Deception or Heightened Senses, meaning getting the opener is going to be pretty tricky. As for rogues in PvP, big battles, fights where people are poking or trying to snipe each other just don't really work for you. With basically no range capabilities, low armor, you'll just drop in a few seconds as soon as you pop out. You need to, well, play like a rogue, I suppose. I think the fact that this actually makes sense by itself really proves what people know rogues to be. Taking 1v1s, picking people off, defending certain areas. In Alterac Valley, you're a great candidate to cause general inconvenience to the enemy team, taking out people at the back, the 60% mounters unfortunately, or just joining the Zerg to lay down some PvE DPS on bosses. As for Warsong Gulch and eventually Arathi Basin, rogues are a lot more useful, good for scouting movement, valuable for both attacking and defending positions due to the CC and burst they can pull off. Whether it's annoying people on defense or recapping a flag, rogues have a lot of uses. Rogues can have many more macros to be sure. In fact, they're probably one of the classes you can macro most heavily around. With all the utility they have and different functionality, you can really put a lot of time into getting a solid macro set sorted. And whilst there are for sure many niche macros, I'm going to go over the ones that I believe are the most rounded and useful. By default, pressing stealth once will turn it on and a second press will turn it off again. Especially in PvP, you'll find yourself in close situations where getting into stealth quickly could save your life. This macro allows you to spam stealth without having to worry about it being cancelled. When leveling, you'll probably be combat, and you'll probably have Riposte. If you do, you can put Riposte on the same macro as Sinister Strike, so whenever it procs, it will fire off straight away. It saves a bit of reaction time on your part. It also does decent damage and a disarm for its energy cost, so it can be well worth it. This also includes a startattack macro, which should be at somewhere on your bar, otherwise you have to manually right click an enemy or use an ability to initiate auto attacks. A spammable sap macro is essential for rogue vs rogue combat. It will try and pick up the nearest target to you and cast sap every time you press it, so it's extremely useful. If you haven't gotten sapped really fast out of nowhere, chances are that person was using this macro. Finally, making use of the mouse over functionality in Classic is a good idea on some of your crowd control abilities, like Gouge, Blind or Kick, and I've got an example shown here. Add-on wise, WeaponSwingTimer should be used, and most importantly to avoid losing damage when a certain series of events occurs. Sword specialization will likely be picked up when leveling, as well as for any non-dagger PvE spec. Sinister Strike can proc this extra attack, and the extra attack resets your swing timer. This means that Sinister Strike should always come just after you attack, so you don't potentially lose an auto attack, unless you were to cap energy of course. It's a small detail but can put you ahead of the pack. NugComboBar or NugEnergy to track your energy ticks more closely, as well as your combo points if you also want this functionality. It just helps you track your damage and when things are going to happen in general. OmniCC, you have a lot of CC, having a better visual indicator to display them on your enemy targets is a real no-brainer for me. Item rack can be very useful, does depend on your circumstance a little bit. You can set up an item condition when you enter stealth. It will equip certain items such as cat's eye goggles to help with your own stealth detection, or maybe a dagger in your main hand so you can ambush. And that would cover the rogue for me, for sure one of the classes with more points to cover than others. Kind of a little bit painful to level, but apart from that really good once you start hitting endgame and getting some gear equipped. Which leaves us with the final class in the series next, the mage. And I know that vid is going to end up being a long one. After having gotten to play Classic for many hours now, and seeing just what mages are capable of, maybe my opinion of them has changed somewhat from what I originally thought. You'll have to see what that means next time. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.
If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe as there's plenty more to come. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Bye.